Hello, my name is Amari, and this is our summary review of the movie Float. To summarize, for most of Waverly's life, she hasn't necessarily been close to her parents because after her parents and her moved to Chicago when she was about 3, 4, definitely before school age, they went back to Taipei. They left her in America, and she has had contact with her mom throughout, mainly through phone calls and things like that, but otherwise she's been in boarding school and pretty much has been forced to grow up too soon and be very independent. Now, she's gone through med school, she's about to start a residency, seemingly in the fall, and in the summer, her mom sets her up to have an internship in Toronto, not too far from the hospital that she's going to eventually work in. On the way there, Waverly visits her Aunt Rachel in a town called Holden, I think it is. And that's when things start to go a little awry. And that's because Waverly decides to kind of get off the autopilot of the life she's had. And instead, she decides to take note of the community that her aunt has gained, particularly after her aunt had a divorce. There, she finds herself taking an interest in the bar that her aunt works in. Her next door neighbor, who Waverly thinks is cute, and considering he helps her learn how to swim and she starts to get involved with his family drama, it seems that Waverly may not go to Toronto as quickly as her mom expected her to, and she may spend an extended amount of time in Holden getting to actually live her life a little bit. So get into the review portion. I don't know if this should be considered a highlight or on the fence topic, but you can definitely see that there's quite a few storylines not taken when it comes to Float that could have been far more interesting than what we got. For example, one of the things that are quite interesting is the family dynamics between Waverly, Aunt Rachel, and Waverly's mother. Rachel and Waverly's mom don't talk that much anymore, especially after Rachel had a divorce. And from what it seems, Waverly's mom used to reach out all the time, but then there was a breakdown in the relationship, and unfortunately, we don't really get to learn the full extent of what caused the breakdown, never mind why Aunt Rachel got divorced and ended up in this small town. On top of that, we don't really get a lot of details in terms of Rachel's relationship with Waverly, especially up until now. And even in terms of Waverly's relationship with her mom, there's just so much that you wished was dived into more. And the fact that you don't really get that is frustrating. And I would even add in, considering Waverly was not necessarily abandoned, but definitely financially provided for, but not physically provided for, it would have been interesting to get a better sense of how life was for her, what's her relationship with her father like, since that's not really touched upon. And there's just so much when it comes to this movie, especially when Waverly gets to Holden, that you can see that she's kind of catching up in a way that it kind of makes you wish that there was more effort to show what led up to this point where she decided to rebel a bit more, if not for the first time. With that said, the solid on the fence topics, first of all, is the romance. Blake and Waverly, to me, do not have chemistry. If anything, kind of piggybacking off the sort of highlight, but more so on the fence topic we just was talking about, you can definitely see that Waverly was somebody who, in some ways, grew up too fast. And eventually, once she hit a certain point of independence, she became stunted and went on autopilot based off of her mother's wishes and whims. So when it comes to her relationship with Blake, you have this person with arrested development, with this other person who had to grow up too fast because his parents died. And in theory, you would think that both of them letting loose a bit more, focusing more on what they feel and what they need would be more interesting. But unfortunately, it isn't. Instead, you just get two attractive actors put together whose characters can bond over their shared issues, but As much as for a lot of films, a lack of experience usually leads to the characters getting closer and you getting invested in them, learning from each other, that doesn't come with this movie. And unfortunately, in terms of Holden, outside of Rachel, Waverly, and that family drama, or even what Blake has going on with Rachel, Elsa's sister, there's just not a lot to invest in. Rachel's friend is pregnant and she has a wife and they run a restaurant, but that's not that interesting. Never mind. Originally, it seemed like Rachel's friend's brother had an interest in Waverly, but that all gets pushed to the side when Blake makes a move on Waverly. And not that I'm looking for another love triangle, because that's done way too much in movies, but you kind of question, why have this character seemingly have an interest in this person, and then once that's no longer happening, they just step back and pretty much are just there. When it comes to this film, is there potential in more ways than one? Yes. But it hints at the potential, but it doesn't invest in a way that allows you to see it realized. And that becomes, I wouldn't say frustrating, but you just see a lot of missed opportunities that make it so that while you'll be able to enjoy the movie, I won't say that you'll remember the movie once it's done and you moved on to something else.